Welcome to the Treasury Update podcast, presented by Strategic Treasurer, your source for interesting Treasury news, analysis, and insights in your car, at the gym, or wherever you decide to tune in.
Welcome to the Treasury Update podcast. This is Craig Jeffery. I'm the managing partner of Strategic Treasurer and today's host on the Treasury Update podcast session. Our episode is called A Platform Mindset, Using Technology to Collaborate, and I'm joined with Ernie Humphrey from Treasury Webinars, as well as some other businesses that he runs. And he's been on the Treasury Update podcast a few times before, and I'm glad to have him here again. Ernie, welcome to today's podcast.
Thanks, Craig. Always a pleasure, and I appreciate your willingness to address a topic that is not considerably mainstream, but things where I see there's a real need and a focus for us to add more value in the Treasury profession.
This podcast originated out of a discussion about using technology to collaborate, and we were talking about accounts payable, accounts receivable, and the idea of being able to collaborate on certain items. Maybe you could talk about what you mean by using technology to collaborate, and then I want to say a few things about platforms, because I think those things dovetail in together and are useful whether you're in AR, AP, Treasury, or any area of finance. So maybe you could start us off there.
Yeah, so really where this really became really a topic of mine, I was very steeped in AP automation solutions for a while, and then I actually had the opportunity to work at one of the AP automation solution providers for a bit. And they actually had this idea where the invoice comes to life. You can go into the invoice, you can see all the backup material. You could ask questions within the software of, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? So sometimes the supplier, you might have questions, right? But you can do that within the platform. You reduce asymmetries of information. You can collaborate. Maybe you're like, hey, I don't want to approve this yet. So as an approver, it gives you the ability to make an informed decision. And so you're communicating within a platform. And then you have all the backup information available to you to ask the question, but also you can send back and forth. Hey, here's a link to the PO. Here's a link to whatever. So it really mitigates the time spent. I would say it mitigates the friction internally and externally with AP. The AR solutions have the same type. In AR, the ability to maybe collaborate with sales, right? You don't want your AR people poking your customers in the eyeball. So you can collaborate in real time, but you can also collaborate in a place where information is being pulled in from your ERP. It's being pulled in from a lot of different places. You can look up customer trends. So you can have an informed conversation live within the platform. So that's kind of where this idea has all come together. And the more that I look at technology, the more I look at that, and I don't see the providers really showing that's part of the ROI is you mitigate time spent on the phone, right? It's amazing how much time is spent both by AP and AR on the phone about things because they don't have the same information or they can't collaborate effectively for a number of reasons.
So you mentioned, example of being able to collaborate at the same time, working on the same platform, so you have the same view. Do you find it also provides the ability to collaborate where there's a time difference? I can go in and respond to something, but instead of it being lots of emails, I'm communicating the other person when they have time, advances it to the next step or level. Is that a significant advantage too of these platforms or these collaboration tools?
Yeah, it can be. The hard part is the live part, right? But it definitely facilitates you having one place and sending out notifications and not getting lost. So yeah, it's great to go in the first thing in the morning and you don't have to go through all your emails. You immediately know, hey, Craig made a comment. I need to take care of that stuff. So yeah, it could absolutely, it removes the friction in allowing people to collaborate, right, as quickly as but also if people are up work late at night, like me, have your phone on, ding, in that platform, right? Then you might have the opportunity to have that, especially if there's an emergency and you don't want to do cell phone. So yeah, it's definitely a way to keep that conversation going and the efficiency resolving potential issues or cutting those off at the pass, right? Maybe it's the next day. You better be careful. You're going to get this phone call. So it's also for that as well, helping people know that there's something that might be coming their way. And here's the information you might need. Things of that nature are also important.
Yeah, the shared mailboxes, the constant emails can get overwhelming when the volume reaches a certain level. But Ernie, I wanted to give a bit of an example or observation on, let's just say, the payment side. I mean, I know you're familiar with Swift. Many people know about Swift, but as a messaging platform, the messaging process, let's say it was for payments, is someone would send a message in, we'd go to Swift. Swift would, check its syntax, deliver the message to the, let's say, the recipient bank, and then the payment would be effectuated or executed. If there's a problem, there would be some process where it comes back to the originator and says, you're missing data, or there's an issue. Or it might be a really long time before that happens, and then you send out some kind of research, and then, a week after you sent the payment, you found out, it got stuck in this intermediary bank. There was some type of problem. What they've done, and I know this is not about AP or AR, but their new payment platform is items are there. It's not just a message that gets handed off and passed back, in this linear fashion. I get it. I send it. I have a record of it. It's in a platform. The other party they receive it. If there's an issue, they can add additional information. Everyone has visibility to it. You can work on it. It's just a different way of working on the payment front. And as you were talking on the AP and AR side, I think of it as, this platform mindset changes how payments are going to be done, how we work on, AP and AR. I mean, it's impacting a lot of areas of finance. I'd love for you to just comment on that or draw any parallels or distinctions on some of these other items that you were talking about.
What you mentioned way back in the day, I wrote an article for AFP called The Payments Detective, because I used to spend some time trying to track down money and see where it went and what was going on. So absolutely being able to go in and seeing what the actual payment status is and people giving that visibility, right? You say you sent the payment, okay, let me see it, right? Or you can get some insight into where it's stuck, and being able to plug in to Swift, because usually if there was an intermediary bank, once I sent a Swift message, they magically find the money, and all that good stuff. But that saves hours and time, days of time, especially working capital. Maybe you're trying to do a merger or an acquisition, you're trying to fund an FX trade, you're trying to do a counterparty thing. So that is incredibly important, and absolutely the ability to plug in, and someone who sees the issue can go in and help mitigate the issue. And then again, it builds trusted relationships, right? You can see where it is. Not that you want to point, it's not my fault. Well, it's the bank. Okay. We can help the bank, right? Because they're going to sit on it because they're a bank, right? But bank says it's true. So so I see the parallels there. And I think it's interesting, the opportunity, right, to pull in, so what I was talking about more, you're pulling in kind of, internal messaging, but the ability to hook into something like Swift. Now that's really cool. I don't think I've heard of that. So that could be game changer, especially for companies that are doing, global payments across the world.
You just said something that triggered another thought. When there's a platform and there's all this lack of visibility, where is the payment? Like you said, you send this research message, and that's when you would find it. And then the person who was sitting on it, people sit on it, they send it after a certain amount of time, or they wait till the message comes. Well, now there's visibility and transparency to that. So you can see how long an intermediary is sitting on it. The pressure to perform grows substantially. Same thing with working and communicating internally on items like you were talking about. What's the end goal? The end goal, I would say, is not that we want to collaborate and get people involved on messages and doing that. We'd rather have it be automated if we could, this end-to-end automation to avoid contact. The reality is there's always going to be some of that. And to the extent we can't do this automation, we're going to have some of these, I'll just call them defects, right? Every time there has to be a human involvement, we can call them defects or just manual processes. And that needs to be made smoother and more efficient. What do you think about that in terms of we're on the track to do more and more with automation and leverage automation for the communication that has to involve people. How should we be thinking about that over the next few years?
One of the companies that I work with, it is about being a better way to do a shared inbox, which you talked about. So there's actually AI and machine learning involved. So there's rules. A customer inquiry comes in, right? It gets put in a bucket, and then there can be an automated message that goes out. And some things it's cool. It's like, where's my money or whatever? It gives them a link and shows a payment status, right? And then if certain things happen, right, then that can go to that, next message, right, to that person. But you can also automate that into some sense, because whoever's going to make that response has to understand the tone. This is a culture. Every interaction you have with a customer should have a goal, and you should track it. Every time you talk to a supplier, you should have a goal. Get people to be mindful, right? We want to have conversations, but the AI and machine learning part of this can really help us mitigate, those, because it's like FAQs, right? How much time do 8 people spend on the phone answering the same question from different customers? So once you define and work on those reason codes, right, for the interaction and you can mitigate those, and you never fix everything. But the important point you made was that we can spend all the time maximizing, trying to get straight through, but then the things that fall out, those take more time than the efficiency gains. So, it's about going into the weeds and talking to people and understanding and having visibility, right, into these communications that are going on and why. Why are they happening? What's the outcome? What are the trends? How do we train our folks to recognize issues before they become issues? And we're actually pretty close to that. It's there, but I still have caution, just because you have to invest in it. But I don't know. It can be automated some, but it has to be personalized enough. So it's just not blatantly obvious that someone's not spitting out some message to me and it doesn't make sense and it's not personalized. So we have to be careful on that front.
I think we've all experienced the overly roboticized. It's like it's like the spell check on or the autocorrect on from an evil computer that we've experienced. But some real good information there, Ernie. Any final thoughts on collaboration, the platform mindset?
Investing in collaboration and realizing how to leverage technology, you want to mitigate the friction you have with your suppliers, and you want to mitigate the friction with your customers. Make it easy to get paid. Make it easy to be, right, a good customer. That's what the goal is. Remove the friction, build those relationships, and technology can help us have the time to do that in the most efficient way possible.
Excellent. Thank you, Ernie. Thanks so much for spending some time sharing some of your views and experience today.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Treasury Update podcast. Be sure to follow Strategic Treasurer on LinkedIn. Just search for Strategic Treasurer. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and statements made by Strategic Treasurer LLC on this podcast are not intended as legal, business, consulting, or tax advice. For more information, visit and bookmark strategictreasurer.com.